want to ask you, it's been a year now, and we all remember a year ago, Vladimir Zelensky was here, and he said, we do not want war, but we have to be ready for it. Now we know it turned into a massive invasion, destruction in the country, but also unprecedented sanctions on Russia. But I have to ask you, for many in Europe, there's this idea, okay, there's sanctions, but Russia continues to move along. It's a zombie, but it's still moving. Are these sanctions working, in your view?
Well, sanctions are working, and I would say the very fact that last year, despite record high energy prices, Russia was still in a recession, and most forecasts also expect a recession in Russia this year to continue. That's a direct impact of sanctions. One can discuss that probably sanctions on Russia's energy were coming relatively late last year. In a sense, if they would have earlier, the effect would have been bigger, because that's the biggest source of Russian revenue.
How much do they lose today on oil revenue, would you argue?
Well, we know those estimates vary, obviously, but it's true that through European oil embargo, through oil price cap at G7 levels, through now oil products price cap, they're running substantial losses, and actually their budgetary surplus has completely evaporated.
And can I ask you, today we saw gas prices drop below 50 euros megawatt hour, which is completely different to the situation in the summer. Would you say the battle to weaponize energy, he's lost it? He made a bet and he lost that bet.
Well, strategically, he has lost it.
He's lost.
It doesn't mean that we will not have still our share of difficulties, because we need to prepare the next heating season. This winter, there were still lots of Russian gas in European energy storages pumped primarily in the first half of last year. This is not going to be the case this year.
So we
still will need to seek substantial additional supplies. Well, we have upgraded infrastructure quite a bit. We have agreements with many alternative suppliers, so it will be possible, but it will be done in a context where also China's economy is more opening up, and we may expect higher global demand for gas. So it still will require quite a bit of work on the European side. But strategically, I think it's clear that we have moved away from this dependency on Russian natural gas supplies.
Forever? That's done?
Well,
Russia's an energy player for Europe. It's done for good?
I would say it's done because, we also have our European Green Deal and aspiring for climate neutrality as of 2050. And that's, among other things, in general, foresees gradual phase-out of fossil fuels.
And either way, the Nord Stream is done, kaput, some will say. I want to ask you a question, a yes or no answer on this question. There is a debate behind the scenes, perhaps we should talk about it more, which is what to do with the frozen assets of the Russian central bank. They have been frozen now for a year, but there's this idea that at one point they could be confiscated and that be used to rebuild Ukraine. Are you in favor?
Well, I'm in favor because it's
to
Russia's...
confiscate and use the money.
Well, exactly, because it's Russia's responsibility as an aggressor state to pay the reparations, to pay for the damages it has created to Ukraine. It's unlikely that Russia is going to do it voluntarily, so we need to look at confiscated Russian assets. And actually, if you look now at the 10th sanctions package, which we are now putting forward from European Commission side, one of the measures is exactly to have precise overview of how much frozen Russian central bank assets there are in the EU.
And just so an international audience gets this has never been done before to this scale, to really confiscate another central bank. Many would argue the problem is if you do that, the G7 jurisdiction is out the window. What do you say to that? I would say unprecedented situations require unprecedented measures. We are facing unprecedented war, aggression against sovereign European nation. It requires unprecedented response. If we remember historically, for example, Nuremberg Tribunal did not have some kind of pre-existing legal framework. It was created as a response to the World War II and German aggression. So here it's similar, that we may need to think outside of the box, and probably we need to create new legal framework to deal with this. And that's a fascinating point. You can really feel the mood around this conversation has changed. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Now you increasingly hear about this confiscation of assets. But I want to ask you, for this to work, you need the banks to report the client relationship that they have and to play along. Will you do that? Will they do that? Are you already in conversations with the European banks? We need to know what you have. That's exactly what we propose now, as I said, in a context of 10th sanctions package. Of course, member states need to agree on this, but that they need to report on how much frozen Russian central bank assets there are in each member state, so that we can have an overview on what is the situation. And also, for example, it concerns sanctioned private entity assets that we need a better tracking system.